Hello, Ron Briggs, Blackmore, Vale Honey, and welcome back to the channel. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at all things Varroa. So yeah, welcome back to the channel. So, and as I said, this episode is going to be all about Varroa. If you remember back on one of the previous episodes, I promised you I'd do a review on this, which is the Instantvap Compact. Well, I am still going to do a review on it, but I figured it wouldn't take very long because I haven't got much to reference it to. So I have used in the past the gas vap. So it's really, really good if you've only got one or two hives, but the more hives you get, the more problematic it gets. Great for a couple of hives, but not so good when you've got 20 to do. So we've invested in one of these. So I was unsure which oxalic acid vaporizer to go for. So my mate, who's also in the market for one, he is a bit of a guru when it comes to technology and the makeup of things. This guy builds his own cars, for example. So he knows all about batteries and discharge and the amount of voltage and all the rest of it. And after his research, he's came up with the Compact, the Instantvap Compact. And he's got a similar amount of hives as me. So I've jumped on the back of his research, done my own a little bit and thought, yeah, I agree with that. So that's why I've got one of these. Don't ask me about all the technical details because I don't know. So we are going to kind of do a review on this as we use it. And the weather looks about right tomorrow to use it. It's sun shining today. The bees are not flying. Tomorrow is even colder, but cloudy. So that'll be a perfect day for doing some oxalic acid treatment. So we'll look at that tomorrow. So the review on the vaporizer isn't going to take that long. So what I thought I'd do, I'd incorporate it into a whole video on Varroa, because it's something that people ask me about an awful lot is Varroa treatments, and how we deal with Varroa. So I thought we'd take the opportunity to make a video and discuss everything Varroa. So what is this Varroa? It's a mite. To give it its full title, it is the Varroa Destructor. And that's quite appropriate because it does destroy honeybee colonies. So this thing has come over from Asia. It's a mite that originally lived on Apis cerana, the Asian honeybee, but it's now travelled to pretty much most of the world. If you remember, Australia got it last year, so it finally made it all the way down there. And we got it in the UK in about 1992. And we've had it ever since, and we've been dealing with it. So I think it's quite important that we take a look at Varroa, because we can learn a lot of lessons from Varroa, which is really important because the next mite is coming along, which is Tropicalaps. Now, if you thought Varroa was bad, Tropicalaps is a whole new ballgame. Think Varroa on steroids. So if we can take some of the lessons that we've learned from dealing with Varroa into Tropicalaps, then that's going to be a good thing. So for example, how has Varroa got here? So Varroa has got here through travelling, and it can't travel by itself any further than a honeybee can travel. So if you think a honeybee can travel up to 3 miles, we're an island. So how has Varroa got across all that water into our island? Well, it's got there on the back of honeybees that have been imported. So if we stop our importation completely, and that's on everything, so on our bees, on our queens, absolutely everything, how's it going to get in? Now, I know that's going to generate huge debate on bringing in honeybees, and people are going to tell me that some of these companies that bring in honeybees are really, really good at what they do, really, really stringent in what they do. That's fine. And I'm sure they probably are. But why aren't we raising our own queens? Why aren't we raising our own colonies, our own queens and our own bees? Why is there a need to import them? Now, I know there's, as again, going back, there's going to be lots of arguments as to why we import them, and it is what it is. So I don't think we're going to stop it, and I think we're going to get Tropicalaps. But by taking a deep dive and a real good look on what we did with Varroa might give us some insights and some help into what we do with tropicalaps. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of work on tropicalaps as we speak. So that's how it's got into the country in the first place. So on the backs of other honeybees. But let's back up a little bit. Let's have a look at this this Varroa. As I've already said, its full title is Varroa Destructor, and it does exactly that. It destroys honeybee colonies. So, and the way it does that is all by itself, it will destroy a colony, but it's kind of like a slow death because the Varroa mites build, they breed in the closed brood or the sealed brood, and whilst they're in there, they will feed on the larvae. So the larvae come out deformed. So you'll see things like deformed wing virus. That's as a cause of Varroa, and they will you have legs missing where they've gone into the larva for their feeding sites. So all by themselves, they will destroy a colony. But actually what's worse is they're also vectors for other diseases. So the Varroa are really good at spreading diseases. Now, I hate the Varroa with a passion, but you can't help admire how it exists. It exists purely on the honeybee, and it uses the honeybee in order for it to survive and thrive. So let's put some scale to this. So it's still got a number of Varroa here, which are obviously bigger than the actual Varroa mite itself. So this Varroa here is scaled to about the size of a Labrador dog. So if you saw something that big, I mean, if you see a tick on your dog, you can freak sometimes, can't you? If you see a tick or a mite or something that big on your dog, that's going to cause you a worry, isn't it? That's going to scare the living daylights out of you, and you're going to do something about it. Imagine what that would look like if it was on a human. Imagine seeing something that size on you when you got up in the morning. You looked in the mirror and you saw that. That would properly freak you out. That is the stuff of nightmares. So that is what our poor old honeybee is dealing with. So we got the Varroa in the hive. How does it actually reproduce? Okay, so there's two phases to the Varroa. Phoretic stage, and that's where there's no eggs being laid, and that's when you see them. That's when you see them in the hive running around. They're not actually laying the eggs at that stage, because then there's the reproductive stage, and that's done inside sealed brood. So just before the cell gets sealed, the Varroa will go in before it's capped. And then what it's done whilst it's in there, that's the mother, it will generate a feeding site. So it will start to feed off the larvae. Then around about 60 to 70 hours after that's been sealed, the Varroa mite, the mother, will have its first offspring. And that offspring will be male. It will be an unfertilized male. Then roughly every 30 hours after that, she will give birth to another mite, which will be female. So what's then in that cell is the mother, one male, and then a number of females. And there can potentially be up to 4 to 5 females in that cell. And then when the honeybee emerges, the female Varroa will come out, so the mother and the daughters. So what was the purpose of the male? What was the male doing in that cell in the first place? What was the point? Well, the whole point was him to mate with the females. So yeah, he mated with his mother and his sisters. So these girls have come out. So to make things better for them, it's better if they go into the cell of a drone. Because if they go into the cell of a drone, there's more females going to come out because the drone cell is capped longer. So, and it's drones, which are one of the ways that Varroa is spread, because you know drones can visit all the different hives when they go off. So if they've got the Varroa on them, then they can spread the Varroa to other colonies. So let's look at the lifespan. The lifespan of the Varroa very much depends on the brood, but it can live from 27 days all the way up to 5 months. So it can easily get through a harsh winter where there's been no brood. So in the summer months, it can live for 2 to 3 months, and that can have 3 to 4 breed cycles in that period. So remember, every time one Varroa goes into that cap cell, 4 to 5 could come out. So potentially you're going to get up to 15 Varroa from that one Varroa. Times that by the amount of Varroa on there, you can see how quick the Varroa can actually grow. And they can grow actually up to 800-fold if they're not dealt with. So that's what the Varroa is like actually inside the colony, but it doesn't stay there, does it? It spreads to other colonies. So, and the way it does that is, we've already spoke about the drones. You can go on the back of the drones. It's if there's robbing going on. So that's why robbing is really important in your apiary hygiene. When it's swarming, they'll obviously then 2 colonies can be infected with Varroa and so on and so forth. So a number of different ways of being spread. Introduction of queens could be another way. So yeah, so that is Varroa in a nutshell. That's what we're dealing with. Don't forget that these Varroa will also be vectors for disease. So they'll be carrying a lot of diseases which they can infect other colonies with. So it's important that we do something about Varroa. So what can we do about Varroa? So how are we going to deal with Varroa? Well, there's 3 methods in which we can deal with it. There is chemicals, Varroicides. There is biotechnical methods, which basically just means bee husbandry. And there's a 3rd method, which is do nothing. I like the sound of that one. So let's look at those in turn. So the first one then, the Varroicides. So that's a chemical way of dealing with them. So, and there's a huge number of different products on the market which use chemicals. But basically, all of them comes down to a similar number of chemicals, which is thymol, formic acid, oxalic acid, and amitraz. And I say different manufacturers have manufactured those in different ways to deal with the Varroa. So thymol, for example, is one that I've used. That's your ApiGuard. That's those little trays that you put in the top of your hive. That's one way. Then you've got the likes of formic acid. Now, interesting, formic acid, one of the ways they can come is with the MAQS, the mite away quick strips. Now, the interesting thing about the mite away quick strips is allegedly you can use those whilst you have your honey supers on. So if you get a huge dose of Varroa when you're doing your checks and you've got honey supers on, that's pretty much the only chemical that you can use. Although I would argue that I don't want to be putting any chemical anywhere near that might be going into my honey. So I don't. There is other methods and other ways you can deal with that, but that is the one you can use. Then there's the oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is a natural product, and there's a number of different ways of putting that into there. There is the sublimation, the gas, which we are going to be using tomorrow, or you can dribble it on the top in liquid form. Now, you may have heard that you can use rhubarb, because rhubarb does have oxalic acid. And I have heard of people putting rhubarb leaves into their hives in order to deal with mites. However, the science doesn't really stack up, because the amount of oxalic acid that's in these leaves that's actually evaporating is so small that I don't believe it can be have any significant advantage to dealing with Varroa. I mean, that said, if the Varroa is low and you've got some in there and it's keeping them away, then so be it. And then finally, there's the amitraz. Now, amitraz is the likes of your ApiGuard. Now, amitraz is probably the best chemical for dealing with Varroa, except the only problem with it is the Varroa becoming resilient to it. A little bit like we are with antibiotics. So we don't want to be using it that often, really, or a mixture of the two. But it is really effective. So there's your chemicals, and you apply those to your hive at various different times of the year, and you just comply with the manufacturer's instructions. But there's actually 2 types of those chemicals. There's your authorised and unauthorised. So your authorised ones have been tested and have been authorised to be used in the United Kingdom, and unauthorised obviously not. Now, it's a bit of an emotive subject because there's some stuff which isn't authorised, which is really, really effective, but you can't use it. It's against the law. So bottom line is, there's so many ways to skin this cat. Don't be using unauthorised chemicals. So that's chemicals. That's one way you can deal with your Varroa. And the second way, which can be used in conjunction with chemicals as well, is your biotechnical methods. Now, all biotechnical methods, it means, is bee husbandry. So that's something that you do in your colonies that will help with dealing with Varroa. And let's look at a couple of those. So the first one we need to look at is which can be used with using any of them, and that's your Varroa mesh floor. Open mesh floors, they're called. You may have heard them called Varroa mesh because that's what they are. So on your open mesh floors, OMFs, you have the holes where the bees can't penetrate, but the Varroa can go through. So that's why it's called Varroa screen. An idea is that's on the bottom of your hive, and any mites that fall off either through grooming or when they're rubbing together, or if you've done a chemical treatment or drop off, they'll go through the floor onto your Varroa screen if you're going to be using that for monitoring, or they'll just drop to the floor and they'll die. They won't survive and they can't crawl back up again. If you're using solid floors, then the Varroa can obviously climb back up into the hive again. So these came about in order to deal with Varroa, but they've come with an added advantage is they provide lots of ventilation in the hive, because in the winter, bees can deal with cold. If you think some of these bees live in some really cold countries, you know, you've seen the pictures of the snow that thick on top of the hives and really, really, really cold. And they do okay. So our little climates in the United Kingdom are getting nowhere near that cold that it's going to affect the bees. But what does affect the bees is damp. They do not like the damp, and we are quite a damp country. So plenty of ventilation, and this does that as well. So open mesh floors, that's one way. When I say one way, that's definitely a way that's used in conjunction with all the rest of them. The second one we're going to look at is what they call drone brood removal. So drone brood removal is where you deliberately give them an area in which to raise drone brood, and then you remove it. Because remember we said before that the Varroa prefer to go into drone brood because it's longer, so you've got longer in them, more Varroa can come out. So if you remove that drone brood, that's obviously going to reduce your Varroa load. And there's a number of ways doing that. You can put in frames that are actually designed for Varroa. So you know you get your wax foundation. The majority of it you get is for worker brood, but you can actually buy foundation which is bigger for drone brood. Or what you can do quite simply is, if that's your size frame, this is a national, so in your brood box you've got all your nationals. So what you can do, you can replace one of these frames with a super frame. And when you put the super frame in, obviously it's not as big as the brood frame. And then what the girls will do is the girls will then draw out the rest of that to the size of a full-size brood frame. They'll fill the box up. What they will generally always do is make that drone brood. So if they're making all that drone brood, all you've simply got to do then is, before that emerges, remove it from the colony and cut it off. And then what you can do, you can put that straight back in again and go again. And then that drone brood that you've removed, you can just dispose of. If you've got chickens, give it to your chickens. They absolutely love it. They go nuts for it. So that is a method of dealing with it. So there's an argument against that though, because the girls need drones. We need good quality drones out there for the queens to mate with. And if all you're going to do is keep taking the drones away, that's going to reduce the amount of drones that are out there, or the amount of good drones. So especially if you've got good queens. If you've got good queens that are nice, calm and gentle, hygienic, which we'll talk about in a moment, then you want those drones to be out there flying around. So you don't really want to be taking them away. And really there's not a lot of need to. That said, if you're getting a high count in one of your other colonies, before you've had an opportunity to deal with it for hygienic bees, then yeah, you can do that, and that will reduce the load in that colony until such time as you can put better queens in there. So that's drone brood removal. That's one way. Another way is comb trapping. So that's where you take a cage like this, and it fits a full-size frame in there. So you put that actually inside, and what it does, this is all queen excluder. So it means that you put your frame in there with the queen, frame of open brood. She lays in there, all the mites will go into it, right? And then all you can simply do, similar to what you did with the drone brood, is remove it. And you can do that over a period of a number of weeks. So you trap it in one, remove it, then you put another one, which is the open brood, in like 9 days later, you trap it, and then another one 9 days later, and that way you go through the colony and eventually reduce the Varroa numbers quite significantly. I don't really like that method. I mean, it works, but it is a real faff. Every sort of 9 days, you've got to change it over. And also, if you think about that, that's a whole frame then that's not going to be emerge into honeybees. So I think if my load was that high that I'd be considering using that, then I think I'd be considering using another method, which is that of your artificial swarm. So remember what I said a bit earlier on with the chemical, that you can use those mite away quick strips. But I think if you've got a Varroa load during the summer months that high in your colony, it's probably best to go for an artificial swarm. Artificial swarm is also can be used in a number of ways for other things. So for example, rather than Bailey comb changing, if you've got a really tatty, horrible hive, you can artificial swarm it. So the way we do that is we literally take the queen out. So we'll get Sarah a frame of some drawn comb. We'll put that in a box. We'll put the queen in there. We will shake all the bees into that box, hence the artificial swarm, so they all think they've swarmed. And then all the frames that were in the original box we'll just dispose of. We'll burn them, we'll get rid of them, we'll do whatever we need to do with them. That way there can be no Varroa because they're starting again. I would probably do an oxalic acid treatment as well, just to remove the Varroa that are actually on the bees still. And then that way you know you're pretty starting off with pretty much zero. But I think it's fair to say that we used to, at one point, have to record if we had Varroa in our hives. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. It's just taken as read that it's endemic. It's in every single hive. There is Varroa, and there's not, we're not going to reduce it to zero completely. So, we just have to deal with it. So that is kind of our biotechnical ways of dealing with things. So yeah, and then the final way of dealing with Varroa is do nothing. Cheers. I like that way. However, it's not quite as simple as that. You can't just do nothing. You can't just suddenly stop dealing with the Varroa in your colonies because they'll suffer. However, you can get to the point where you do nothing. And that's where I'm trying to get to at the moment. But it does involve a lot of testing and queen rearing with the right type queens. So we have these things called hygienic bees. So this is a relatively new thing. There's been a lot of research in it, and it's coming more and more. And the more research is being done, the more we're realising, yes, this is a way of dealing with Varroa. But we thought it was going to take forever because the Asian honeybee, Apis cerana, is dealing with Varroa. It does this extra dance. You've heard of the waggle dance. Well, the Asian honeybee will do a grooming dance where it says, "Oi, I've got a mite on me. Deal with it." And then one of her sisters will come along and knock it off for her. So we thought it would take a long time for the Western honeybee, Apis mellifera, to actually learn how to deal with that. But instead, they've come up with a different way. So you've got these bees called sniffer bees, and they will go along over the comb and they can sniff and detect underneath sealed comb or sealed brood if there's a problem. And not just Varroa, that can be for a number of different diseases. And then what they'll do, they'll open the cappings all around that area. And then the worker bees will come along, see the cappings are open, what's the problem with this? And then if there is a problem within that cell, they will remove the larva. And if there's not a problem, so if there's like one in there that's got Varroa, and they'll remove that one, but they'll cap the others back over again. And then that's a way then that they can deal with Varroa. So there is ways of identifying that, which I'm not going to go into now because that's a whole subject all by itself. Suffice to say that obviously when they take that larva out that's got the Varroa in it, then there's only one Varroa that's coming out, which is the original female, the mother that's gone in. So what it's doing there, it's keeping it's policing itself. So one Varroa is going in, but only one's coming out until eventually that Varroa can't breed anymore and will die. So it keeps its numbers really, really low. Doesn't get rid of them completely, but it gets rid of them low enough that it ceases to be a problem for the bees and the beekeeper. But you can't just stop, because if you just suddenly stop, those bees that's in your colony might not be hygienic bees. They might not have that superpower to be able to detect the Varroa and diseases in the cell. So what you're doing, you're looking for the ones that are. And the way you can look for that is through testing, and you can also see on the actual frame as well if they've like resealed them up again. So that brings us quite nicely on to how we test for Varroa. Okay, so how do we detect Varroa? So a number of different ways of doing that. The simplest way and the easiest way is to put your Varroa screens in underneath your open mesh floors and put it in for a number of days, and then go back, count how many mites are in there, and then you do an equation of timesing that by the number of days, or dividing that by the number of days that you've had your screening, and then that gives you a fairly accurate number, although it's not that accurate, but it gives you a number and a way to detect. Obviously, if it's absolutely riddled with Varroa, then you don't need to do any maths. You know you've got far too many Varroa, and then you need to do something about it. But I don't really use that. It's not that accurate. If you use some of the other methods, then you'll realise that really is not that accurate. So I use two methods. So I like to test my bees about once every 4 weeks. So I mainly use sugar rolling, and I've got enough equipment to do four, might be four now, but 3 hives at a time. So what I'll do, I'll go to my out aid, for example, I'll do the first 3 colonies, and then that's it, so there's no contamination. Then I'll clean my kit, and then the next week I'll do the next 3, the next week I'll do the next 3, and then eventually after about 3 or 4 weeks it comes back to the beginning again. So the one that I like to use is sugar rolling, and that is where you take, if you go back to, I think it was September's, well, go back to my previous videos and you'll see how I actually did it. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, other than to say you take a cupful of bees, 1 cup of bees, you put it into a jar like this with some Varroa mesh on the top, but actually it can be anywhere between 200 and 400. So if you think about that, that's going to skew your results massively depending on how many bees you put in. So what this one gives you the opportunity to do right at the end of the year is actually count the bees. So you count the bees and you get a really accurate number before you decide if you're going to treat or not. So that's the way we do the testing. And then what you can do is once you've finished, you can take the lid off and you can shake this back into the colony, and the girls will clean up their sisters. And then the bees don't die that way. And it gives you an accurate number, not the most accurate, but far more accurate than the Varroa screens. And then finally, once a year, so at the end of the season, just before we go into our autumn treatments, I'll use alcohol. So what that is I'll drink a load of alcohol and then try and test the bees. Sorry, that's not the way I do it. I put alcohol in here. I put that same cup of bees in, and then I shake them around. And what that actually does is it kills the bees, but all the mites are then left in the solution, and you can count the mites. But the good thing about this is you'll be really, really surprised the difference in a cup of bees, because a cup of bees is meant to be 200 bees, but actually it can be anywhere between 200 and 400. So if you think about that, that's going to skew your results massively depending on how many bees you put in. So what this one gives you the opportunity to do right at the end of the year is actually count the bees. So you count the bees and you get a really accurate number before you decide if you're going to treat or not. So that's the way we do the testing. So now we've done our testing through the year, we can see the numbers of the mites. And if the mites are really, really low, and you know what, you learn what to look for within the colony, that'll be a really, really good indication as to whether you've got hygienic bees. And if you've got hygienic bees, they're the ones you want to breed from. So it used to be for me, calm and gentle was the most given thing. They had to be calm and gentle above all else. Not now. Now, this comes as either on the same plane or certainly as a close second. So they've got to be hygienic and they've got to be calm and gentle. And then I breed from those queens. Now, obviously, that's only part of the equation because you don't know what they're actually going to mate with, what drones they're going to mate with. But if we all go down that line of breeding hygienic queens and our own queens, A, we can stop the import of these bees that are coming with the Varroa and the tropicalaps on them. And B, we can start putting some really good drones out there for our neighbours and our friends and other beekeepers. So that's what we're actually aiming for when we talk about doing nothing. We're aiming for those hygienic bees that ultimately in the future, apart from testing, which if we get it right, we can actually reduce the amount of time we test to ultimately not treating them at all. Right, so that completes that part of the video. Now we understand the Varroa. Now we get on with the actual oxalic acid, which is what it's all about. So I do my oxalic acid treatments between Christmas and New Year. And tomorrow looks like it's going to be a cracking day to do it. We've had a couple of days that have been really, really cold. It's always best to do when it's cold, and tomorrow looks like no different. So we will have a look at this and we will review this at the out apiary tomorrow. Morning. So we are up at the out apiary, ready to give these girls their oxalic acid treatment. So let me talk about the machine first out of the box. So as I said at the start of this video, it's I've gone for the Instantvap Compact. And my mate, who's the technical wizard, he's done loads of research, and he's come up with this one for himself. And he's got about a dozen hives, I think. So I've jumped on the back of his research. I've done a bit of my own research, watched a lot of YouTube, etc. And I think it's probably about right. So this is the one we've gone for. Not used it yet. This is brand new out of the box. So what I have used in the past is the gas vap, which works really, really well. Look it up online. It looks like plumbing parts, and you put what is in essence a lighter, large lighter. You know the ones that chefs use for doing the flambe of the when they do their cooking and what have you. It's like that. It goes in the top. It heats it up. You've got a little metal cap that you put your oxalic acid tablet in, you put it on, then the heat makes it work, and it works well. However, the problem with it is that if you start to get a number of hives, you kind of have to wait for it to cool down a bit before you can go on and use it. Because what will happen, two things happen. First of all, that cap gets really, really hot. So when you've got to remove the cap before you put the next one on. So straight away, you want more than the two that come with it, depending on how many hives you've got, obviously. I went with 4. So you've got to wear gloves. Careful if you've got the poly when you take the old cap off before you put the new one on. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, with the poly, you put a longer tube on. Well, because it cools, a lot of residue gets stuck in that long tube. So then you have to use like a blowtorch of some sort to clear it before you move on to the next one. There's nothing wrong with it. If you've got, I would say, up to maybe 8 hives, then that works really, really well. Just means you've got to do a little bit of messing around. So for some time, I've been looking to upgrade, and I've finally spent the money out on this. So as I said, it's the Instantvap Gas Vap. It comes with the main body itself, one of the plungers for putting your oxalic acid in, and a couple of spare O-rings. That's what you get with it. There's lots more accessories you can buy, which I have done. The first one I've bought is this, which is a silicone thing that goes on the top. It can only go one way around. And what that does, that stops any, when you put the oxalic acid in, it stops any of it spill out, but not going onto the main body of the actual thing itself. So there you go, that's like that. So I bought that separate, that was a separate thing. I did buy a second plunger, and the reason being is that you set them for the dosage of your the oxalic acid. So you'll see on the end of the plunger, there's numbers, 1 to 4. Well, that's grams. So nukes need 2 grams, which that one's set to, and full-size colonies need 4, which that one's set to. So it means that when I'm in the process of it, I'm not messing around with gloves and mask and everything else on, swapping these around. I can just swap the plunger. And what's nice about this is the spare plunger can sit in the handle, and whilst your main one's in the main body. So that's quite cool. Now, I think the machine came, I'm pretty sure, some time ago, with a silicone end, because if you're using wooden hives, you go straight in with the nozzle. But if you're using poly, then you have to put that on, otherwise you'll melt your poly. I can't remember if it came with one of them, and I think it came with one. Then I bought a packet of spares. Then the other thing that I bought separate, you can buy separate for next to no money actually, is something to clean it with. You just fill that with a little bit of water at the end of a session, and you then just put it through the machine. But I forgot to bring some water with me. So what I'll do is when I get home and I clean this out, I'll show you exactly how that works on the cleanup. Right, so that's what came with it. You choose what batteries you want to put with it. So when you actually order it, you choose what batteries you're going to use, and the system comes for those batteries. Now I'm, as you've seen, if you've watched any of my previous videos, my build videos, anything else, DeWalt, all my tools are DeWalt, so I'm lucky I have them for work as well. I've got a number of DeWalt batteries. So what we're using today is I've got 2 5 amp hour 18 volt DeWalt batteries that go on the machine like so. Simple as that. And then there's an on-off switch on there, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I bought 2 batteries. I'm doing 10 hives today. I have no idea if the battery is going to last, whether 2 batteries are going to last, whether I'll do it with 1 battery. I actually got my drill as well. So I do have, if need be, a smaller battery as well. So no idea, but we'll see how that goes. So the other thing we're going to need is oxalic acid, which I've got, which obviously doesn't come when you buy it. And the other thing you can buy is a case to keep it in, because what you got to remember is these are going to get really, really hot. So you don't want to put it just in the boot of your car hot, or back in the shed hot, or whatever. So you can actually purchase a case. You don't have to, as long as you're careful, you're going to be all right. But obviously, because I'm traveling to and from my out apres, I needed a box. Now, the box that you buy is in essence just an ammo box, like this. Yep. So the only difference is between this one is that if you buy the dedicated one, you've got actual place where you can keep all your accessories. They'll actually stick in there for you, and a place for the battery, so the battery can stick in, and so on and so forth. But quite a bit of money for what it is. I picked up an ammo box. You can, brand new. I think I paid 15 quid for it, I think. So that's the only difference. Right, so that's the kit I've got. Let's talk about how we use it. So, and the only other thing that's in the box is the destruction manual, which actually is quite good, because a lot of the time now you just get the instructions online, don't you? But obviously if you haven't got your phone or whatever, you're out in the field, it does come with the instruction manual, which would be quite good because this is a first use. Right, so let me show you what the setup is of the actual hives. Right, so I suppose one of the disadvantages that I have, because as you know, I'm in that position, I can't decide whether I like poly or wooden, is I've got a number of different hives. And the problem is when it comes to the oxalic acid, I need to get them all sealed up. So you'll see that on my wooden hives, because I've made the underfloor entrances, piece of sponge rammed in the entrance, works really, really well. And then you put your Varroa floor in. And that's the problem. I had to bring a whole load of Varroa floors because I weren't sure which ones were going to go in my hives. However, the way this works best is if it's sealed. the better sealed it is, the more effective it's going to be. So even though, as you can see in the back there is a Varroa screen in there, there's also a big gap. So I've taped it up as well. So this is another wooden one, the same, but the piece of sponge wasn't quite big enough to fit in there to give a really tight seal. So we just rammed a bit of rag in there. Nothing wrong with that. And in this one, the actual Varroa screen is nice and tight in there. So, and what you'll notice here, you'll see the hole in the back, because we'll talk about that in a moment, but you're talking about where we're actually going to put the oxalic acid vaporizer in to the actual hive, and that's what that hole's for. So now you come to this one. This is one of the sorts of a bellows, and it's got its Varroa screen in it, but can you see there's a gap on the top? And that's no good really, because when we start vaporizing, all the gas is going to come out of that. So we need to tape that up before we start. So there we are. You see I've taped that up, but I've left a little hole there because that's where I'm going to go in with this one with the vaporizer. So on the front of the polys, that's where you can go through. Sometimes I don't know how it's going to work with this vaporizer, but sometimes with the old gas vap, the landing board, the shelf just kind of got in the way. So I prefer to go in through the back or through one of these. So another Abello one. Again, we've taped up the front, but you see, same as the other one, how you've got the poly inserts that you can use for ventilation. Well, if we look at the back of this one, you'll see it's got one poly, but I've also had a couple of those plastic ones to allow ventilation. So all we've done there is we've closed that up, sealed that up so it can't get out of that one. And this one, we've just made a nice little hole, and that's where we're going to go in with the vaporizer, because I'll talk about how what happens to the vaporizer in a bit. Didn't need to tape this up because this was a nice tight Varroa screen going into this sort of this type of a bellow hive. That is unbelievable. The temperature is 2 degrees, and you've got one of the girls there trying to get back into that hive. So it's obviously been out. There you go. Who says that bees don't fly in these conditions? Can you see this screw head here, a plug? So originally when I first made these, that's where I used to go through. I used to put plugs into them, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally over to the nukes. So I've closed all the entrances up with properly sealed, so that there's no, on these nukes you get the choice. You've got like fully open, breather for if you're moving them, transporting them, queen excluder, and closed completely. So I closed them all up, all completely, because what I intend to do is, if you remember with these, we've got rear entrances, apart from one of them. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the rear entrances on these ones. And do you remember, you might have remembered last month I showed you this. So with my original underfloor entrances, there was no way of putting a Varroa screen in, so you had to lift the whole lot up and put it onto a board. So I designed this that I can sit it onto, which sealed it all up from the bottom. So the difference is, and then the other thing I did was, because with the polys, they sit up on their legs, and then they've got those 4 legs, one in each corner. So I designed this as such that the legs would sit down and it would give a complete seal to the polys. So I still use it for the polys, but it's no longer needed for the underfloor entrances now, for the main hives, because they're all now got Varroa screens on them. So I've yet to cut this down so that it's just for nukes, but that's what that's for. So all we do with the nukes is we'll do them one at a time. We'll do one, put it and move that across as we do each one. So that's all the nukes sealed up. Ooh, that's cold up here. Can't believe that bee was flying. So the vapor then from the oxalic acid, there's a really good video on YouTube. Go and check it out. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically someone's done some testing with the vapor in a glass box, so you can actually see what happens to the vapor. So the vapor stays low, so I'm guessing that the vapor is obviously heavier than air, so it sinks. So if you're vaporizing from the bottom, the vaporizer might not get, or it does, if you watch the video, you'll see it does just about get to the top of a brood box, but it doesn't get higher into the higher boxes. So the best way is going to be to vape from the top and have it sink through. And And Dunny, Dunny Bees, I had a chat with him, and that's exactly what he's done. So he's made a box which goes on the top, and so you vaporise from the top. So that's brilliant. Problem I've got is that I only do my oxalic acid at this time of year, generally speaking. So one of those, I'm going to make one of those jigs to go on the top so that we can vaporise from the top during the summer months. So if we need oxalic vaporizer for swarms or for cutouts, or we just got a heavy load and we need to do it without any supers on, that'll be perfect from that. Problem I've got is that the majority of my oxalic vaporising is done during the winter. So during the winter, like today, and certainly last couple of days, and certainly at night time, they're all in cluster. So if they're all in cluster, you don't really want to be taking off the crown board, because that's where they're all going to be. And if it's cold, really cold, you're going to break all the seals, and they're not going to like that. And if you consider that, what they say, it takes about 3 to 4 days for a colony to put a hive back together the way they want it after you've inspected. Well, if they're in cluster, they ain't going to break the cluster. So if you upset all those seals that they've made with their propolis, it could be February before they get a chance to put it right again. So don't want to be going in the top, really. The only thing you want to be doing in the top at all is when you're changing your feed. Right, so we're not going to go in through the top. So therefore, we've got to come up with another option. So what I have seen is, I showed you that plug that went in there. I've seen people put that in higher up in the boxes and do that, and they go in through the top one, which comes down. That's a really, really cool idea. I like that idea, giving that some thought. But what are we going to do today? How are we going to overcome this? So when you look at those, at the way that vapor goes, it does seem to do the whole of the brood box. So I like to get my bees down into one box for the winter. Really get them down there, because if you think your colony is going to go from what, 68,000, something like that, 60, 70,000 in its height, and it could go right down to 6,000 in the winter. Certainly less than a brood box, so it's going to go right down. So that time in the autumn, which I showed you in one of my videos, how I've got the queen excluder on and I keep her in the brood box and get them all to go in one box for the winter, serves a number of purposes. One, the colony is going to stay warmer, or it's going to help them stay warmer, because they've only got the one box to heat. They've not got the 2 boxes to heat. 2, when they go into cluster, it's always generally at the top, which is where the feed is and everything else. So if you have a brood and a half on, they're going to be in the half brood. And then as it starts to warm up, generally speaking, she will lay and the bees will look after that top box. So what can quite often happen when you then get into the spring is all the bees are in your super and you've got nothing in the brood. So then you spend a period of time swapping the boxes around. It's called a nadir when you put the half brood on the bottom. So you spend a lot of time nadiring it to get the boxes back in, the bees back into the brood box in order to run with it. So if you manage to get them down into a brood box, you're good. So when you come to the spring, the brood box is full, it's rammed, and you're just ready to go. So that's another good reason for getting them down just into the one box. Another reason is, it means you get an opportunity to clean up all the other boxes, to clean up all the half broods and clean up all the dirty wax and everything else before the spring and before you go again. And obviously the other advantage is when it comes to the oxalic acid, because you haven't got a brood and a half, you've only got the one box to actually treat. So a couple of mine here are on brood and a half still, just because that season last year went on so long, didn't it, with the ivy? Just I couldn't get the numbers down into just the one box like I normally do. So I've got 3 of my boxes are 3 of them are just on brood, and in my new apiary they're just on brood. But I have got 3 which are on brood and a half, like this one. So if I just put the vaporizer in the bottom, chances are it's not going to get to anything at the top. And as I've just said, where is the likelihood of that brood to be? It's going to be at the top. So we need to do that. We need to think about that, really. So this is where the Abellos have that advantage. Because they've got that air vent in each box, it means I can go through the air vent near the top and the gas will sink perfect. So that's no problem on those ones. And the other one, the Maysmore, we can work that one as well. But the wooden boxes are slightly different. So do I put a bung in the top of the wooden boxes and go that way? Or what's my option? So I obviously know what I know about the top box that you put on and everything else, which Danny told me all about. We had a good discussion about that. Obviously vaping from the bottom. What are you guys doing? How are you guys vaping the whole of the brood area? Right, so let's get on and actually do some vaping. Okay, so the next thing is that oxalic acid, albeit a natural product, is not good for you. It really isn't. You don't want to be breathing this stuff in at all. So you need PPE. So the first thing is I'd suggest nitrile gloves, even though I'm going to be wearing a second pair of leather gloves. It's the first time I've used it. I used to have to wear the leather gloves when I had the gas vap for taking the caps off. This is going to get hot. I don't know whether I'm going to need these or not. Might not. I'll tell you at the end of it. But just in case I do, I'm going to put these on, which is going to give you that extra protection. I've got my bee suit on. I'm completely sealed up there right from the start. It's cold. There should be no bees flying. But we did see that rogue bee. Don't know where she came from. And if you remember, for those that have been watching my previous videos, the yellow and blue hive has got a little bit spicy. So I don't want any of those girls to get out or want to be coming back whilst I'm messing around there and I haven't got a bee suit on. So I've put my jacket on for just in case. And also it's cold, so it's an extra layer of warmth for me. Then the next thing we're going to need is a set of goggles. So a good set of goggles, because you don't, again, the oxalic acid especially doesn't like moisture. So any moisture within the body it's going to attack. So you want a decent pair of goggles. These are my goggles that safety goggles that I only use for my bees and the oxalic acid treatment. I don't use these ones for work. I don't want them all scratched up. I keep them in a nice case so they don't get scratched. But the important one, the big important one, is your respirator. So the respirator you need has got to be able to deal with biological as well. So most respirators that you buy off the shelf are not for biological, but most of them that you buy off the shelf, you can get the filters to make them biological. So this is a pretty good brand, JSP I think it was called. Yeah, so this is I've used this. I used to use this for work. I use a slightly different one now. So and I keep this just for the bees, but I've changed the filter on it. It says JSP, so it looks like, and that is good for biological. But you just got to make sure it fits properly before you use it. All right, so that's the PPE. And then the last thing we need to do, just for our own safety, is to be aware of the wind direction. And that's quite a simple thing to do. If you just pick up some grass, and throw it into the air and see which way it goes. So the grass went that way. I'll do it again. Let's pick up some vegetation, throw it into the air, and it's gone that way. So the wind or the breeze is going this way, right? So I would be best if I start my hives at this end. So if I do that yellow one to start with, any vapour that comes out is coming this way. Right, then I can go to the second one and it's coming this way. So I'm always going away from the vapour. I'm always upwind of the vapour, not downwind of the vapour. So if I work all the way to the end from this side, I'm never going to be in the vapour. So that's what we do. Right, let's get this machine fired up and see how we get on. Okay, so I'm going to do this one in real time, so you can see how long it takes. I'm not going to do any editing of this part. We'll run this part fully. So there might be some pauses while we wait, but then you'll get to see fully what the time is. So apparently what we do, we switch it on. And once it's switched on, we're going to get a blinking light. That tells us it's warming up. Then when it's solid light, that's when we're in a position to use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it on. Whilst that's warming up, I'll put my PPE on. I'll try to talk to you through it, but you might not hear me when I've got my respirator on, but you'll get an understanding of what I'm doing. So I'm going to switch it on, put my PPE on, load up the plug, the canister, with 4 grams of oxalic acid, and then we were going to go, I don't know if you can see this, I might move it down, we're going to go in through the back of the hive at the bottom there and see what happens. We don't need that on there. Okay, so I'm ready to go. So I'll switch it on and we'll see how we get on. So we've got a blinking red light, which is what we're supposed to have, which is telling us that it's warming up. There we go, and that light is now solid red. So I don't know how long that took. We'll be able to check back on the video, won't we? And now it's ready to go. Right, so all we simply do is we put that in there. We put that in our hole, and then all we got to do is hit the plunger. I can hear it, but I can't see anything at the moment. There we go, just starting to come out the seals now. So that's pretty cool. There's not much coming out there at all. If that's that much oxalic acid going into there, then that is really, really cool. That means most of it's gone in. And, yep, the way it works, I can actually do it hands-free. And it is going down that way. Let's move you back up here. Okay, so that's finished now. So that was a solid red light when it was ready to go. Then when I actually started using it, it started flashing. And then when it's solid red light again, it's ready to go. So you saw how long we waited. Let's see how quick it is now between each hive. So all I'll do is take my plunger out, load it up again, put that in my hole, put that in there, and away we go. Again, you can't see that probably, but the red light's flashing. So you can see with this hive isn't quite as well sealed up as the other one was. Okay, so that was flashing red light whilst it was doing its stuff. Now it's gone to solid red light again, which means it's ready to go again, straight ready to go again for the next one. Now the only difference with the next one is it's a poly. So we're going to have to slip the little cap on. Okay, so the next one's poly, so we're just going to slip that on the end of it. That's probably not going to stay on this one. No, so I'm going to have to actually hold this one. So, better not put that on there. So, sit on there, don't want it. Really easy to load the dosage up. So actually, after that initial warm-up time, this is really quick. Let's just... it takes your battery quite quick though. We're down to 1 bar on my battery. Mind you, I have been messing around a little bit. So with these polys, the thing's not holding itself up. You can get a stand to actually hold it. So you need to bear that in mind. We've done our homework here, and all the vapour's going that way. But if it was a day where the wind was swirling around, it'd be all round us while we're holding it, hence the respirator. This has done really well. Poly's going through that top there. It's all sinking. Nice tight Varroa tray in there. Nothing's coming out, so all that vapour stopping in there. So that's cool. Onwards to the next one. Okay, so what I have done, I'm still using the same plunger, and I've taken it from 4 grams to 2 grams to see how long it would take to do it. And it does take a little bit of time. So when you're running through the whole lot, it is best to have 2 plungers. One for your hives and one for your nukes. Right, we're going slightly different on this one, aren't we? Okay, so we've just done the 8th one, and now we're not getting a solid red light. It's just flashing and not so quick, which means the battery's gone. And if you look at it, yeah, the battery's dead. So I managed to get 8 hives done with 1 battery. It's gone straight to solid now, which means it's warm and ready to go. So that's quite good. So the quicker you turn over the batteries, you're good to go straight on again. Because I've been messing around with this, when I tweak it next time, I probably could have got all 10 done, but we'll carry on. So I think what I've learned from this with my nukes is I need to make a couple of those bases for it to sit on, because obviously that vapor takes a bit of time to get round. And if I go straight on to the next one now, even though my gas, the vaporizer is ready for it, when I lift that the nuke off, a lot of the gas, a lot of the vapor just disappears because it was in there. So if I had another couple of those made, that would make life a bit easier, because we could just put or a load of nukes on all at once. Tell you what though, nukes are of a good weight. Okay, so we're done. I've done those extra bits. I've opened up the hives again and checked the feed and all the rest of it. So yeah, really quite pleased with that. That went really, really well. Just a couple of little issues I'll talk about, which are kind of applicable to the hives and the setup I'm using, but you might be using the same. So first of all, let's talk about these polys. So I predominantly use the BS honeybee nukes, and pretty much all of mine are that. So the three of these, you can see the three with the lower roofs are all BS honeybee nukes. And you can see they've got the arch on them. They have the double entrance on them, whereas this one here is slightly different. So first of all as well, the other thing about those Mazemore ones, they're not designed to be two nukes with two entrances. You can see there's no entrance on the back. So there's that to start with. And secondly, there's a lot more space in the roof. Is that the feeder inside is not the same as the BS honeybee nukes. So the BS honeybee nukes, what happens there is you've got the bung in the middle, and you've got the two feeders each side, and the liquid can go down each side, and you can take the bung out and put your fondant in. That works really, really well because it's for two. This one is slightly different in so much that it's got, it's not really set up for fondant, it's only set up for syrup. So again, the syrup can go, goes towards the middle, and they have the feeder in the middle. So because this is on fondant, the way I've overcome that is I've taken one of the strips off and one of the sides off. But what that's done is left a big void in here. So what's happened is when I've vaped it, all the bees have gone, stuff that, like they would with smoke, and they've all moved up into this. So two things has happened there. One, obviously the treatment might not have been as good because it's not getting in all around the bees, potentially. And two, I've now ended up with a load of bees in the roof there, and I'm just hoping that they will all go back down again. So I think lesson I've learned from this is that I will only be using my BS honeybee nukes for overwintering. Nothing wrong with those nukes for splits and all sorts of things in the summer and all sorts of manipulations. Great, just not ideal for when I do the oxalic acid. Okay, the woodens on brood and a half, I think we're going to have to put some sort of bung in the top. I'm not sure. I don't really want to do that because, you know, the following year that might be a honey super. So not sure yet. Not 100% sure what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to go away and have a think about that. But that said, the amount of vapor that actually came out of there wasn't that much, so it must have done what it was supposed to do. The poly is much better because you've got those vents in the top and you can go through those. So yeah, really, really pleased with this. A couple of things in comparison. So remember how I was talking about I had the gas vap. Well, the gas vap used to actually melt the polys even on the longer one, whereas this, because it's got the silicone thing that goes over the end of it, brilliant. Didn't affect the polys at all. So that's a good upgrade. I can see in the top of this that there is some oxalic acid in there, some powder, obviously from where we've put it in. So that's worked quite well in forms of keeping it clean. Let's have a look at this battery. Okay, so this battery now is down to 2 bars, and that battery was flat. So to do my 10 hives, I did 8 with a full battery, and then the other 2 with this battery. So I reckon I probably could have got away with 10. So the next time I do it, I'll be more proficient and probably could get away with the 10. But I've always got a couple of batteries. You know, if it can do 8, then it can do 16, can't it? And if you bring more batteries. And what I liked was the moment I took one battery off, it was telling me that it was flat. Put the other battery on, it was ready to go straight away. So there's no waiting again. So it took a bit of time, as you saw at the beginning there, for it to cook up to its right temperature. But once it did, it was just bang, 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 really quick. So yeah, like this a lot. It is an improvement, without a shadow of doubt. It's an improvement on the gas vap. But then that said, if I only had 4 hives, I'd be using a gas vap and not one of these, purely financially, because the gas vap is much cheaper than what one of these is. Right, so all that's left to do now is go to the other 2 apiaries. We'll get this and get this done in the other 2 apiaries. I might do some filming, I don't know, we'll see how we get there. Okay, so what I've been doing whilst I've been, when I take these boards out, I've been having a look on the boards and I've been counting up the mites that I can see on each board, making a little note of it with the hive, so that when I go home later, I can match that to the ones that weren't treated in the autumn. But I have to say that this is the pink one. There's 1 mite on here. And that's kind of been about the theme. Some of them I ain't seen any. Some of them just seen 1. So 2 things is there that's good. 1, obviously the treatments, the ones I didn't treat in the autumn are not riddled with Varroa now, which is quite good. And 2, the autumn treatments I did on the others has also proved successful. And what's interesting as well, don't forget, is that this year in particular, because we had that late, that the ivy went on such a long time, didn't it? So the brood in there would have been much more. So you'd expect on the normal circumstances the Varroa count to be higher, but the autumn treatments obviously did their thing. So no, really pleased with that. So that's it, vaporizing done. So all that's left to do is the cleanup. So what I'll do is take my for the actual main body of it. First thing, I'll put my gloves on, my nitrile gloves, because there's a lot of oxalic acid residue around. So we want to clear all that as much as we possibly can. So we're going to give the outside a clean. We're going to remove the, that's still quite hot, which is nice. Remove the silica thing on the end, give that a good wipe down. Just basically give all the surfaces a wipe down. In the top there where it caught the powder, we'll give that a wipe down. The cloth is a little bit damp. I've made it a little bit damp just to collect everything. And I think that's all we need to do. Then all we've got to do is clean the chamber. And to clean the chamber, we use steam. So I'm going to put the thing back on to cook it up at temperature. So whilst that's flashing and getting itself together, I'll just finish off talking about it. Really impressed with that. It's taken 2 5-amp-hour batteries to do 17 colonies, and I'm hoping there'll be enough just to do this last bit of cleanup. So you do need a couple of batteries, or depending on how many hives you've got. So for cleanup then, you've seen me wipe it up. I am going to put all my PPE back on because it is going to be hot and we're going to be putting water through it, which will turn to steam. Same thing with the wind direction. The wind's blowing that way, so I'm going to aim it that way when it goes. So it all goes up there. But like I said, I'm going to put my PPE back on again because there is going to be residue in there when we do it. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the leather gloves over the top of this. I don't know, might not get that hot, but we are talking scalding steam, so I'd rather not risk it, if I'm honest. So when it comes to the plunger, there is quite a bit of residue on there. I might get a wire brush and just brush that off. But interestingly, the numbers now have all worn off. So it's worth having 2 of these, 1 set of 4, 1 set of 2, or whatever you're going to use, because you're not going to be able to read them again after the first few uses. So that'll be interesting to see how they last. And we've just got to fill that with water. Not much goes in there. See how much goes in, not much at all. That's it, it's full. Our gloves on. That's back to solid red light. We take out water, invert it. So that's that. Clean up, really quite simple. Not sure how that's going to go. We've give that a scrub and a clean. But as I say, those numbers have worn off. I've got 2 of these, and I think it's right that we'll just keep 1 on 4 grams and 1 on 2 grams. And that should work, but we'll update this the next time we use it, just part of our fortnightly vlogs. And that was it. So yeah, really impressed with this. This is definitely the future, definitely the way forward. Obviously, if you've not got that many hives, consider the gas vap, or maybe some trickling or something along those lines. So that completes my review on the Instantvap Compact. And and that also completes this video on the Varroa that we did as well. So we'll end it there. As always, I hope you got something from it, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next video. Goodbye. Let's flip it over.